Now, in Johannesburg, you have to apply for permission to hold a protest, a picket, or even a march. But that comes at a price. The city charges a fee to approve protest action, and the fees range between 175 rand all the way to 15,000 rand. Civil rights groups, including Right2Know, say this infringes on the right to protest, and they're now taking the City of Johannesburg to court. But for more on this, the organization's campaign organizer, Thami Nkosi, joins us now to elaborate on this decision. Thami, good morning to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us this morning. Why is this particularly problematic for protesters, these fees that we're seeing here, ranging from 175 all the way to 15,000 rands, and why are you pitching for the right to protest for free?
Look, I think, good morning, and thank you for having us. One of the things that we find problematic is that this could prove to be prohibitive, particularly for disenfranchised communities who may want to essentially engage in a protest to make their voices heard. Look, the right to protest is infringed in the Constitution, and we have the regulations of the Governance Act, which regulates, protests. And for the city to actually be charging people to exercise their rights is actually unconstitutional. So for us, we feel that this is a prohibiting factor for communities that may essentially want to rise up and actually claim their spaces in the civil space. So that's the reason why we're taking the City of Joburg to court.
Yeah. In this particular case, what's your argument to the City of Johannesburg?
Well, our argument is simply to say if you're going to be charging for protests, essentially what you are doing is that communities who may not necessarily have the resources to be able to pay this fee will not be able to, to protest and as a result be heard. I think the right to protest is sacrosanct to our constitution insofar as being able to articulate some of your grievances. And this is a tool that communities use in most cases to essentially be able to raise their voices so that they can be heard. And if you're charging people and if you're charging communities, poor communities may not necessarily be able to exercise their right to be heard. And this is one tool that is used particularly by communities here.
Yeah, Thami, let's get into some examples, because I know that at the core of your case also is, organizations like yourselves, claiming that there are cases that stem back as far as, October of 2020. I understand some members wanted to hold a protest. They were told to pay a fee of 297, or at least approximately that fee. And they were told that if they did not pay, then they would not be able to obviously hold their protest. Are there any other, cases that you can share with us that have been problematic, obviously infringing on that right, as you're saying, for them to, of course, have their voices heard?
There have been plenty, including ourselves as Right2Know. One of the things that we have done is to, renege on the protest fees thing. So usually when we want to protest, we go and notify. One of the things that, the city is actually misinterpreting is to say, we don't have to apply for a right to protest. You notify the city so that they can make the necessary arrangement in order to provide the adequate policing, the adequate traffic management so that the protest can go smoothly. And the fact of the matter is that we need to be clear. The regulations of the Governance Act says nothing about asking for permission. What it says is you notify, it's the government's responsibility to actually manage protests and actually support protest and be able to police protests. So it has been us ourselves, but we've reneged against it and went ahead and protested without paying the fees. Luckily, we've not been arrested for that. SAFTU in 2018 got charged something like 12,000 to stage a protest, and we feel this is very ridiculous. So many communities, in fact, would go to the City of Joburg, notify, and they would be charged, and they would stop their protest because they don't have the money to do so. But we've reneged on that, and we've encouraged some communities as well to renege against that because it's against the law.
But what has been the City of Johannesburg's counter-argument to this? Why are they charging these fees? What's their reasoning behind, charging these fees?
The bizarre thing is essentially that the bylaws are actually circulating around the commercial events. So the city actually misinterprets a protest from a commercial event. So, for example, if you're going to have a Red Bull kart racing or whatever the case might be, the bylaws, of the city gives the city the right to charge Red Bull because that's a commercial event. It's made to raise funds or whatever the case might be.
Right.
So the city actually misinterprets that and applies that to communities, which is two different things. And that's the reason why, we've had conversations with them as far back as 2017 with the legislature and the speaker at the time, Owen Gama. We've had, bilaterals with them. We've had bilaterals with JMPD. And the truth of the matter is that there's a misinterpretation or the misapplication of the different bylaws that are there. By all means, charge commercial events because they raise money. These are big conglomerates that may have the money. So if they're disturbing the peace, then they should pay for that. But communities should not be charged for that.
All right. Well, I appreciate you speaking to us this morning, Thami Nkosi from Right2Know campaign. Thank you so much for giving clarity as to why pursuing this legal case against the City of Johannesburg and speaking to us this morning.